Instead of just shutting down the conversation, Blake Lively was like, I've never seen it. Instead of just being like, can we stop talking about that? She was like, I've never seen that. I'm a liar. Okay, so I'm reading Blake Lively's deposition, and it is hilarious. There are some very, very funny, ridiculous things. So just jump back in. The videos are on my page. You can go to YouTube and watch this in long form. Okay, so the actual words that you used, this is a question from Brian Friedman. So the actual words that you used were saying, I've never seen it. Is that right? And she says, well, his attempt was to explain corn and what that was and how I felt to be pornographic wasn't actually in fact pornographic, and that he was expressing his expertise on it given his previous addiction. So she's like, this looks like corn. And he was like, you think this looks like corn? Do you even know about corn? Like, Blake's mad that someone educated her on what actual pornography was because she didn't know what she was talking about. Got it. Okay. And she continues. And in an effort to no longer be talking about pornography, because I was never trying to talk about pornography, you're the one who brought it up and said it looked like corn, Blake. I said the scenes felt pornographic, and I wasn't opening a door to discuss pornography or anyone's past with it. I attempted to shut it down and change the subject. So she just expects to say things that are incorrect and never have anybody, like, tell her that she's wrong. She just wants to shut it down and change the subject. Don't you dare correct her. And he says, Brian Friedman says, did you ever tell Justin, don't talk about pornography to me anymore? She said, that's what I felt like I expressed. And he said, and you expressed that by using the words, I've never seen it. Objection from her attorney. She says, I said, I've never seen pornography. I don't know anything about it. And he says, prior to saying that to Justin, had you, and then it jumps to another page that doesn't consecutively carry on this conversation. It says Brian Friedman, he's saying, sure. Are you claiming that as a part of your lawsuit, that it was SH that either Justin or Jamie disclosed to the cast and crew that you never looked at pornography? Objection. She says, I felt upset and disturbed and exposed that an effort at deflecting something that he had said that felt like it had crossed a line, instead of taking that and not doing it anymore, that he took that and used it in front of other crew members in the workplace. And he says, and this is Justin and Jamie also. And she says, Jamie was always around Justin. They were a pair. So my memory of them together on set, and that was them together. He says, did you actually overhear Justin and Jamie tell crew members or cast members that you had never looked at pornography? She says, yes, I remember hearing that. He says, you heard it from them directly? She says, I remember hearing that from Justin. Yes. And he says, and Justin said that in front of you? And she says, yes. And who did he tell? I don't remember specifically. I remember him speaking about pornography in a casual way. And he said, oh, Blake doesn't know anything about that. She's never seen it. Sounds like he's making fun of her, because he knows she's a goddamn liar. When was this? What date? She says, I don't remember what date. He says, do you remember the month? She says, it would have been May of 2023. Do you remember this? He said, did you bring this up with Angie? She says, I don't remember if I made it to that. And he says, did you bring it up with anybody at Sony? She said, eventually, yes. He says, in May or June, did you bring it up to them? She says, no, I don't know if I made it to that. Like I said, Anne shut me down quickly, telling me I couldn't file an HR claim through Sony. He says, who was there when Justin was saying that you had never seen pornography? Who is the cast and crew were present for that? And objection. She says, I don't remember specifically. I remember the feeling more than I remember the specifics. He says, can you be more? Then it jumps to another page 71. Can you be more specific? He says, sure. Did Leslie Sloan call you and tell you that she received information from Stephanie Jones about a smear campaign or something similar to that? She says, she did not. He says, did you learn from Leslie Sloan that there were text messages in Jen Abel's phone? No. Who did you learn that from? Ashley Avenant. Who is that? She's a friend of mine. And what did she tell you? She said that a woman that she knows named Stephanie Jones was trying to get in touch with me. She gave me more details. He says, when did she tell you this? Late August of 2024. And did she tell you that in writing or on the phone? On the phone. And what else did she tell you? She told me that she works with a woman in a blank. I think she's an interior designer, and the woman's name is Stephanie Jones, and that she's a publicist, and that she has a phone which contains the most disturbing messages she's ever read in her 20 to 30 plus career. That as a mother and woman, she was sobbing reading the messages. That she thought I deserved to see what had been done to me. She said that she had reached out to my publicist, Leslie Sloan, to share the same and was not, and was brushed off. But she said that she felt like I should see these messages and that they were on a phone that she had ownership of because it was a company phone. He says, Stephanie, did you speak with Stephanie Jones? She says, no, that was relayed to me through Ashley. And he says, and did you get a hold of these documents? And he says, objection. And she says, eventually, yes. And he says, when was that? And she says, fall of 2024. He says, when you say fall, can you be more? And then it cuts off and goes to page 177. He says, did you cause or suggest to this cast of It Ends With Us to stop following Justin Baldoni on social media? Objection from her attorney, no. Did you have any discussions with anybody in the cast about that? She says, yes, a couple of us spoke about it. He says, and when did you speak about it? She says, Jenny Slate was very upset on the first round of production, so she unfollowed him in May or June of 2023. And before the film came out, Jenny doesn't manage her social media. She has a person to do that for her, and she noticed that this person had re-followed him, and she really wanted these people out of her life, she put it. I don't know if these were her exact words. And she was concerned about the tough position we were all in, which is wanting to protect the film and also wanting to respect her own boundaries and dignity. Who else did you have discussions with about unfollowing Justin Baldoni? Colleen Hoover told me after she unfollowed him. Anyone else? No. Are you aware that Sony ever suggested that you were the cause of people unfollowing Justin? Objection. No. Are you aware of Sony saying it was your doing that right before the premiere? Everybody stopped following Justin, which caused immediate interest in the dispute? Objection. Answer. Given that Sony is a corporate entity, can you be more specific with who you're speaking about? Anyone at Sony? Anyone at Sony? He says yes. She says, no, I'm not aware of that. He says, you've never seen a document or seen anything that indicates in any way that Sony was holding you responsible for the cast unfollowing Justin. Is that your testimony? She said, and then objection. And then it jumps to another page. 185. Oh my gosh. Okay, so this is going to be the last page I read on this one. So I had no reason to ask unless there was an outbreak, but nobody told me there was an outbreak. So I said, why didn't anyone tell me? And she said, well, because we don't have COVID insurance is my understanding, so I don't think you wanted to test. And he says, and did you verify that information with anyone? And she says, I was told the next day they did not have COVID insurance. Yes. Who told you that? Alex Sachs. Did you request a meeting with Jamie, Justin, and Alex Sachs on June 2023? I don't remember the date, but I do remember when I came back after having COVID, I requested a meeting with them. How did you request a meeting? Was it by email or phone call? I don't recall. Was this an in-person meeting? Yes. And this was the first day of production began after you got back from COVID, right? She says yes. Was anyone else invited to attend the meeting that didn't attend? She says, not that I recall. What was discussed at the meeting on June 1st? She said, I wanted to check in with them about many things, but upon starting the meeting, Justin started to explain to me that Jamie showing the nude video of his wife was okay and that it wasn't Jamie's fault. Justin said, it's my fault. I told him to show you because I thought you wanted to see it. So it's not on Jamie, it's on me. Which was so shocking to me because I had a conversation with Ange a few days before saying I wanted to file a formal HR complaint. She told me I couldn't file a complaint through Sony and that I had to file it to the men who were making me so uncomfortable. And I asked her not to tell them so that I could figure out how to deal with it properly with my team. And she told them. I didn't know what to do and I didn't know how to handle it because that's not the way I planned it to log my concerns. Okay. And it was especially upsetting because I now was confirmed everything that I was afraid of, which is that I didn't find it to be an issue. They did say, abso-fucking-lutely not, this never will happen again. They said, it's my fault, it's not his, I thought you wanted to see it. They didn't ensure me that I would have a safe set. They didn't offer me HR to help or to call. They didn't tell me who was responsible ever, not then, not before, and I had to stop working with these people, and And I had to keep working with these people, and I had to do sex scenes with these people, and I had to do a RAP scene with with this person. Ooh, okay, I am almost done reading Blake Lively's deposition, and this girl is going in on it. Okay, so the question is, did you have a body double that could have done that scene? And she says, when we came back, I asked for a body double, yes. And did you ultimately have the body double do that scene? She says no, because it was after the protections were in place and the set was much better. At the June 1st meeting, did you, and her attorney interrupts and says, just before you go on, are you okay? And she says yes. He says, do you want to take a break? And she says, no, it's fine, let's go. He says, on the June 1st meeting, did you expressly tell Mr. Bardoni and Mr. Heath that there were serious HR problems on set? She says, I don't know what words I used because I wasn't planning on addressing the HR issue with them directly in my trailer with Alex Sachs in that moment. But I did express real concern for the things that had occurred thus far, including Jamie entering my trailer when I was naked from the waist up. So when Jamie showed you the video of the birthing scene, the after birthing scene, are you familiar with that? Objection. That's not what I said, no. Did you recall Jamie showing you a still image on his iPhone? Objection. No, I recall a moving image. Did you watch the movie? Objection. I wouldn't categorize it as she says, movie? I wouldn't categorize it as a movie. No. Well, did you just say movie image? She says, moving image. He says, oh, moving image. I apologize. Did you watch the moving image? As soon as I saw that it was a naked woman fully exposed, I asked him to stop. Was there a birthing scene during the production of It Ends With Us? We had already shot the birthing scene when he showed me that video. And did he tell you why he was showing you the video? No. And he just showed it to you without explaining anything about it? Yes. And you just looked at it, and how long did you look at it? Objection. Very briefly. Very briefly meaning 2 minutes, a minute? She says, I stopped it as soon as I saw that there was a naked woman he was showing me because I didn't know what it was. There was no context. He did not ask if I wanted to see it. He did not ask for my consent. I asked if if he told me it was his wife giving birth. I asked if he had been given consent to share that with me. And what did he say? She wasn't there. What did he say that she said? He said, she's not weird about that kind of stuff. And he said, did he tell you why he was showing it to you? She says, no. He says, you had no idea whatsoever why he was showing it to you. Objection. She says, no, there was no reason to show me that day we were shooting in a Boston bar. He says, during the June 1st meeting that we were just talking about, attended by yourself, Jamie, Justin, and Alex Sachs, during that meeting, did you call the actions of Justin Baldoni S-U-L? And then it jumps to page 208. She said, I would do a Colleen Hoover film because the narrative or the sentiment was this book romanticized and actualized, more specifically, not romanticized, but actualized domestic violence. And does negative press bother you? Objection. She said, I'm used to it after this many years in the industry, but it's not something I've had to deal with often. And he says, well, I mean, it's true that you've dealt with negative press with respect to being married on a plantation during kind of the height of Black Lives Matter. Is that right? An objection. She said, it's true that I have dealt with negative press during that. I was not married then, and I feel like that negative press was deserved. It's a mistake we had publicly acknowledged and done a lot of work to reconcile for ourselves and others. And he said, just to be clear, you're not alleging that anything related to the plantation wedding is part of the smear campaign. Is that correct? Objection. She says, no. No, it's not correct, or yes, it is correct. Well, objection. Well, your question was unclear. Can you say it again? He says, one more time again, I apologize. In any of the press that came out around that was negative around the fact that you were married on a plantation, is it your position that you believe that's part of the smear campaign? Objection. I don't know. All of that was created, dredged up as a part of the smear campaign. I take full accountability for that decision, as does my husband, but I don't know what weaponizations of the past has been part of the campaign. He says, what do you mean by dredged up? She says, I mean that both directly and indirectly by creating this environment, there was a story that was being told about me suddenly on August 9th that it was about my character. I was a mean girl, that I was a bully, more specifically that I was a bully, and then it cuts to 220, objection. She says, I did not ask that of anyone. Like I said, as part of the return to work protections, my lawyers negotiated with both the Wayfair parties and, as Wayfair represented it, Sony as well, on what would be sensitive in nature. So you never asked anyone or anybody on your behalf, ask anyone from Sony to destroy the dailies. Is that correct? Objection. She says, no, I never asked anyone to destroy dailies. No. He says, what about, did you ask anyone on your behalf to contact Sony to destroy the dailies? She says, to destroy the dailies? Objection from her attorney. She says, no. He says, did you ever draft an HR complaint? She says, I don't know what that means. He says, a human resources complaint. Did you ever fill one out? Her attorney objects. She says, I was never provided an HR resource. So is that a no? You did not? Objection. I went to my attorneys and asked for HR protections because I was not provided an HR resource. No. So in August of 2023, you had not drafted any type of HR complaint. Is that correct? Objection. Like I said, I wasn't provided an HR resource. I had attempts to file HR claim. I have made attempts to file HR claims. He said, you made attempts to file written HR complaints or oral ones. She says, Wayfarer parties never offered me or made me aware of who to go to for HR. That's standard on set. I don't know movies that happen anymore in which the actor doesn't have to do an HR meeting along with the rest of the crew. That's a requirement. But this film did not provide it, as far as I'm aware. And so I called Angie Giannetti and told her that I would like to file one through Sony, and I was told that I couldn't. He says, did you ever refer to the Wayfarer defendants as clowns? And she says, that sounds familiar. He says, did you ever refer to them as doofuses? And then it jumps to page 225. And he says, what film was that? She says, I don't recall the name. And he says, and that didn't happen as a result of you being SH'd, or did that not happen as a result of the smear campaign? Objection. I don't believe those two are mutually exclusive. I believe that I was SH'd and retaliated against. And part of that retaliation was a smear campaign. And the smear campaign harmed my prospective work opportunities. Have you worked since it ends with us? She says, have I worked? He said, yes. She says, can you be more specific? He says, have you had a job which pays you money? And objection. She says, I work regularly. I don't get paid money from my work. Bitch, what are you doing? He says, what jobs have you held since it ends with us? Objection from her attorney. I have a company called Betty Buzz, and I have a company called Blake Brown. He says, and you've done no other work since the end of it ends with us other than working on those two companies? Objection. He says, have you? She says, no, I don't believe so. He says, were you in a movie with Anna Kendrick? And she says, are you asking about, I understood your question to be since it ends with us came out. He says, she says, are you asking since I shot It Ends With Us? He says, that's correct. Since you shot It Ends With Us. She says, okay. He says, since the beginning of the smear campaign, objection. He says, you're using your definition in different ways. The way you have defined the smear campaign for purposes of today is the digital manipulation that occurred in August of 2024. That's when the film was released. So that's what I understand us to be talking about. Are you asking about from the time the film was completed being shot or from the time it was released? He said, did you go to the Toronto Film Festival on a movie that involved Anna Kendrick also? And she says, when? He said, did you go to any? It was actually Austin. Did you go to Austin on a film that involved Anna Kendrick? She says, yes. I just don't want to mistake my testimony. So when you say, since it ends with us, I just want to be clear for the record that I understand you to be saying since it ends with us came out, because you're timestamping it from the smear campaign. So I have done a movie since it ends with us finished shooting. I have not done a movie since it ends with us came out and the retaliation campaign started. Have you received any offers of employment? Objection. Of employment? I don't know what that means. Well, has anybody offered you a role in a movie or asked you to take a look at a movie to be an actress or a writer or a director or an actor or any role? And she says, since, and her attorney objects, since when? He said, since it ends with us came out. And she says, no, I'm not that I'm aware of. And he says, who are your family members that may have been substantially harmed? Objection, my husband and children. Anyone else? I believe that my mother and siblings have been emotionally harmed, and I believe my sister and her husband have been emotionally harmed. He said, you won some accolades since It Ends With Us came out. Is that true? Objection, I don't know. Were you selected in having something to do with either Time 100 or People 100? Did anybody honor you? Objection, I don't think that's characterized as winning an accolade, but yes, I was honored at the Time 100 and the Time 100 list at the Time event. And then it skips to page 89. This is the end. Okay, we're on page 89 of the Blake Lively deposition. There's only like 4 more pages. We're on page 241. It opens up with her attorney objecting like usual. She says, no, that's not how I would characterize what happened. And Brian Friedman says, how would you characterize what happened? She says, I Taylor was coming to my apartment anyway to hang out. Justin was still there. I was very afraid of the state of the script, given that he had been adding naughty doctor scenes and then some, which we discussed earlier. And I was aware at this point that I could not get out of this film. I was also aware that Justin was not. It didn't feel like he was making forward progress. He had changed the script significantly from the one I had signed on to. I didn't know he was changing it significantly. He told me, he sent me a script and I said, can you send me a version with stars on it? Which is what happens when you change a line. A star shows up in the margin. And he said, oh, I'm 15 drafts in from the original. If I sent you a version with stars on it, the whole thing would be starred. So the entire film that I had agreed to was changing significantly. I knew I couldn't get out of the film. I was trying to do anything I could to make it better because I requested that we go back to the draft that I had agreed to join the movie on, and he said he'd already been prepping this one. We can't go back. I didn't know any of this was happening. I tried. I sent him pages. He was busy that weekend. I think he had a friend in town, and I didn't feel like he was taking it very seriously that the script was of concern. And other people in my life, mutual people that he knows as well, were very concerned about the state of the script. And I sent Taylor the script on her way to my apartment because Justin was still there, and I asked him to read them. I told her she didn't have to. I didn't want her to feel pressured to do that, but I hoped that she would. And if she liked him, if she could express enthusiasm, because I was hoping that that would create some excitement and that he might pay closer attention to them. Question, isn't it true that you told her that whether or not she read them, she read your pages, that, and then it skips to page 274 from 242? Jesus, okay. When Mr. Freeman allegedly made these defamatory comments on behalf of Mr. Wallace, did he make them prior to the lawsuit, to that lawsuit, which has now been dismissed, being sent to New York? Objection from her attorney. How about that? He says. Objection to that. My understanding, this is Blake, my understanding is that Mr. Friedman's harmful statements started as soon as the first case started, which would be mine, so December of 2024. He says, okay, the premiere of It Ends With Us, the film, was August 6th, is that right, of 2024? She says, I don't know the exact date, but that sounds correct. He says, okay. Then Babcock says, have you got 1051? I made a document that may help. He says, thanks. You can attach that one. That goes up. It's 275 now. He says 1051. If you go to the fourth page, next to the last page, it says Tuesday, August 6th, 7 p.m. It Ends With Us premiere. Location, AMC Lincoln Square, 1998, Broadway, New York, New York. Does that refresh your recollection as to when the premiere was? She says, sorry, I wasn't there yet. This is 8981, Tuesday, August 6th. It Ends With Us premiere. Yes. He says, okay. And the film's release was on August 9th. Is that right? She says, in the United States, yes. It released at different times in different international territories, but for the sake of our conversations today, when I talked about the day the film was released, I was talking about August 9th. He says, okay. And you testified earlier that that's when you first became aware of the negative argument or the negative article about you, right? Objection. Not an article. No, it felt like no, not one article. And then that's it. And that's it. That's all we've got on our deposition. But there is a lot. There is a lot that was unsealed. So I might read some more. I might not. But I always think a Blake Lively deposition moment is a good recollection of her character. It's good, like, you know, it's good. All right. Love you guys. I don't know if we're going to still be on TikTok in a couple days, but if you watched all the way through this, I absolutely love you. I cannot wait to make some more videos to read for you. I'm going to be doing that over on YouTube. If you want to support, go over and follow me on YouTube, subscribe, hype a video, do all the shit that like makes it worthwhile to be on YouTube. So thanks for being here and listening, and now I'm going to go chill out and enjoy the rest of my night. Bye.